Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast brought to you by RaceForThePrize.com. New Hampshire Cup Series 2024 early week picks, early week look at the trends, doing the research, who's going to dominate. And I do think we're going to have a dominator. What will that optimal lineup look like? Are we chasing place differential, or do we want to spend up for drivers that are going to run up front and scrape fast laps? Does value come through? We'll talk about all of this and more. And you can do your research on your own. Get the July spreadsheet for $30, and I will include New Hampshire, which is a part of the June package. That's right, $30 July. I will include New Hampshire, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. You know the trend. Nashville, Chicago, Pocono, Indy, IRP. Get in. It's July. NBA is gone. Maybe you're not an MLB guy. NASCAR, where it's at. Last couple years, Truex crushing in the Gen 7 car. Crushing before that. I'm mainly going to focus on 2023 and 2022. You can look as deep as you want, but we can see Truex getting those fast laps and laps led in 23 with 103, 65 Hulk points in 2022. So let's look again at previous optimal lineups, and we'll run through the explanation. Obviously, Truex kills. Kevin Harvick with a pretty solid day. Now, generally, it wasn't the best day for him, but Kevin Harvick's been great here throughout the years. Rodney Childers has been really good at setting up at New Hampshire throughout the years. Made a name for himself with a breakthrough win with Brian Vickers. Epstein, anyone? Remember that? Should I even mention that? That got kind of brushed under the rug, didn't it? His connections and his wife with Epstein. Anyway, Brian Vickers, we miss you, bud. MWR wins. Rodney Childers didn't really have the best day. SHR Fords have been good at this track. Uses a little bit of strategy. We'll talk about the strategy in a second. Either way, ends up in the optimal lineup. Now, if you're looking at this optimal lineup, it might seem strange, but you're going to notice here, Eric Jones, 24th. But he finishes 11th. Average running position of 24th, finishes 11th. Dillon, 18-9. Briscoe, 17-10. Although you could argue that Briscoe earned this. This wasn't really a play on the strategy at the end. And the races are different. If you look at 2023 versus 2022, 2023, we get cautions at the end. It alters the optimal lineup. 2022, on the other hand, we run green towards the end. And so we don't get like these big place differential value plays that come through and surprises. Now, also with that, the cautions at the end of 2023 took out some of the drivers that may have ended up in the optimal lineup, whereas in 2022, you don't get cautions at the end. And so the drivers that ran well all day ended up in the optimal lineup. So it depends on what kind of race we get. If we get cautions at the end, this may not be the build. The green run to the end in 2022, we ended up with guys that ran up front all day, scraped fast laps all day. Chase Elliott doesn't squeeze in, but we are able to get Kevin Harvick. There it is, another optimal lineup. So, hey, maybe Josh Berry, a guy with short track pass. Rodney Childers connection, obviously, as his crew chief. Although Josh Berry was never good in his 3 races with Junior Motorsports in New Hampshire. So that's a bit of a concern. Anyway. So when we run green to the end, the guys that run up front all day, fast laps, finish up front, and that's your optimal lineup. And because you have to pay up for those guys in the green flag ending race, your value becomes, the bar is a little bit lower because no value comes through. And the best value that comes through in 2022 is Austin Dillon, who also ends up being optimal in 2023 as well, but through a different strategy. But just runs 25th all day, finishes 23rd at 6,300. He's just the only guy that works. Does get you 4 fast laps, points, but when we run green to the end, our value bar gets lowered. And the rest of the lineup is mainly guys who run up front all day, like even Bubba Wallace, who ran really well here, 4.5 fast lap points. Runs up front all day at 7,400. It's a different build. When we get the cautions, it's a little different. 2023, we get the cautions. And so what happens is some of these guys ran long and caught, and we'll just go ahead and throw that on the screen to illustrate that for you in full detail. Like, how did Austin Dillon do it? Well, we can look at the lap by lap data. And you see Austin Dillon runs long. He pits a lot later than everyone else. And Kevin Harvick generally runs a little bit longer. And so since they have fresher tires, when the caution happens on 271, they stay out. Now, there's a good possibility that they would not have been able to hang on to their position with a little bit older tires, but because we only run 3 green flag laps, they're able to get a solid finish in the end. When we get that caution, the majority of the laps are run under yellow. And so then we see the same thing with Eric Jones, who also runs along. He doesn't even pit. Now, he does pit here, but he had already gained all these spots, and so he doesn't lose too many. He gets fresher tires, is able to hang on for a solid finish. Again, Jones didn't really have a good car. Neither did Dillon. Now, Briscoe, the other guy, ended up in the optimal lineup. Actually did. He worked his way forward. He started deep in the field, so his average running position isn't as good, but that's because for, the first 100 or so laps, he's working his way deep in traffic, and so every one of those laps is counting against him in his average running position. But he steadily makes his way forward, and it's not a surprise. He's been great in the Gen 7 car at the short tracks, gets a solid finish, so that helps us understand the previous optimal lineups. You're looking at really two circumstances: running up front all day and a green flag finish at the end, and we want fast lap guys, or cautions at the end and who catches the lucky breaks with the cautions. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be the lineup. Now, because so you take away thinking, well, we get cautions at the end, we're going to do the place differential game. Yes and no. Yes, obviously 53 points from Jones and these guys, it opens them up. But the other part of that was, and which kind of correlates with last year's build, the drivers that run up front all day, like Christopher Bell, his average running position, 10th isn't because he wrecked at the end. If you take out the wreck at the end, he's a top 5 car all day. There's the fast laps. He's up in the optimal lineup. Just like in 2022, we run green at the end. Here again, William Byron, issues at the end, runs up front all day, fast laps. Ryan Blaney, when that 272 lap caution comes out, he gets a speeding penalty. And so he gets buried in traffic for the close of the race, doesn't get enough green flag laps to overcome that penalty. He finishes 22nd, but he ran up front all day, was getting his fast laps. So what we're generally seeing at New Hampshire is the guys that run up front all day are going to get some fast laps scraped off. Yeah, I mean, Truex kills it. But there's fast lap points for the other drivers in the top 5. And if they have an affordable price tag, they can squeeze into that optimal lineup. Also, it's worth mentioning that last year's race was on a Monday. And we know Monday morning Martin Truex Jr. If we ever race on Mondays, it's always Monday Martin. So let's look at the short tracks. And so you got a pretty good idea of what to expect here. And we pull up the short track data sheet. And let's have a little fun here. Because again, we're just trying to make some picks early in the week, do some research, and you have access to this if you've gone to racefortheprize.com and Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App, and you can dig deeper on your own. But before we do that, or you do that, how about we just walk through it together? And what I have decided to do for this podcast, using this sheet, is let's just operate under the assumption that Truex once again goes out and beats everyone over the head with a hammer or with a lobster or whatever. And so then from there, we decide, how do we want to build? And barring cautions at the end, which we don't know if we can get or not, let's just assume, again, another assumption, that it's not crazy at the end. Or even if it is crazy at the end, it's just not the elite drivers that are affected. You know, Bell wrecks at the end of 2023. Blaney gets the penalty. Let's just say that, yeah, okay, even if there are cautions at the end, it's just not the best drivers that are affected. So we've got Truex. Then we're looking at, well, who can run in the top 5, finish in the top 5, scrape off those fast laps, but also we need to be cost conscious because, you know, I'm going to have to pay $11,000 for Truex. Then you're like, all right, who are the next top 5 drivers because they're going to get fast lap points? Well, yes and no, because if Kyle Larson is 10-6, then he may also be a guy that finishes top 5, gets fast laps, but ultimately does not end up in the optimal lineup. Similar to what we saw in 2022 with Chase Elliott. What we're looking at is we want a guy that is going to finish up front. We want a guy that's going to run up front like Christopher Bell. But we also need their price to be semi-affordable at 91. Kevin Harvick finishes 5, average running position of 5th the entire race, 8,800. Elliott, very similar, finishes runner-up, but at 10-3, we can't make it work. So what we're looking at now in our short track sheet is, let's assume Truex runs away. Who would be the next 2 or 3 guys that go into the optimal lineup, running up front all day, finish up front, and are scraping fast? We may be able to make it work with Elliott, who is generally running a lot better. I mean, even earlier in the season in the short track package, he's always going to benefit from his pit crew. And that's going to inflate his statistics. But that's not going away. God, I don't know if he's as fast as everybody else. Well, in clean air, he's fast. Up front, he's going to be fast. His pit crew is going to keep him up there all day. We've seen it all year. I know that he has not been an elite driver. And, you know, Penske now has come alive. And JGR has been up front the entire time. But Elliott's right there, always within striking distance. And even if he doesn't run away with this race, if he just runs in the top 5 and we get a slightly discount on him, then fine. It just depends on what his price is going to be. I don't think Byron's going to be affordable enough. Now, I know you're going to lean on, well, Martinsville, New Hampshire, correlation, and Byron was great at Martinsville. Sure, that's fine. But even if Byron is really good, he still has to unseat Truex. And if Truex goes out there and crushes and Byron is too expensive, he very much could end up like that 2022 Chase Elliott spot where, yeah, great day. And Byron was good here last year. But the price just might not work in the optimal lineup. There's nothing wrong with the pick. It just might not fit. You know, your analysis of, oh, he will be fast and he's going to run well. Congratulations. But you also have to be cost aware. Same thing with Larson. Probably going to be too expensive for a track where he really hasn't crushed at. Maybe you get lower ownership based on that fact. But again, if Truex is the guy, then how do you afford Larson? Now, we go to the next guys who have run pretty well at the short tracks. So we're sorting based on average running position this year at the short tracks. Logano is up there. We know Penske is coming to life. He is running well. And if we can get an affordable price tag in the 9K range, we're not asking for Logano to win. Say, okay, Truex, you take it. I just need Logano up front all day, where he finished second at New Hampshire last year, if we pull that up. All the way over on this side. Just need you to run up front all day, scrape some fast laps if you're affordable. Same thing for Bubba Wallace, which is probably going to come at a better discount. Finished 8th last year. Finished 3rd the year before that. Who had Loudon, New Hampshire as a Bubba Wallace track? Does he have the DraftKings sponsorship again? Is there something going on there? I mean, it is the New England race, the closest to the Boston headquarters of DraftKings. Either way, he's running well at New Hampshire. He's running well in the short tracks of the season. And you get a bit of a discount. We're not asking for it to win. We're asking for a top 5 and scraping some fast laps. Hamlin probably going to be too expensive, and he's not generally trending in the right direction. Now, this is a bit of an overreaction probably to a poor Iowa race. Before that, he was fine. But if we're going to be concerned with Byron and Larson being too expensive in a race that could be run away with by Truex, then yeah, same thing. Blaney, really good here last season. Obviously trending in the right direction everywhere he races. Penske's looking really good, but we might see his price tag finally jump up a lot, especially after getting 118 points at Iowa. Reddick, probably sleeping on him a little bit too much. Obviously charting out pretty well here. Got some fast lap points, I believe, at New Hampshire in 2022, if I'm not mistaken, or 2023. 6th place finish, 9th highest rated driver. Clearly, the 2311 cars have some speed. Now, what really appeals to me is maybe not necessarily getting the fast laps, but if we're looking at drivers that can run inside the top 10 and help us fill out our lineups, I think Bowman fits that mold. Chastain fits that mold. I don't believe Chastain got the best finish last year. He didn't. But he also spun out, or actually went wide on one of the last restarts in that race and lost a bunch of spots. The year before, he was much better. Keselowski doesn't really do much for me. I am intrigued a lot by Josh Berry. He is really starting to come into his own. He is a short track racer. Rodney Childers checks the box for New Hampshire. Can he run in the top 10? Yes. By running in the top 10, can he get some fast laps? Yes. Will he be more affordable than the drivers that I've previously mentioned? Yes. Chase Briscoe, it's a track where he can excel. Will he be affordable? Yes. Lowering the standard a little bit, he may not be number 2 or 3 in the optimal lineup, but he can clearly be a 4th or 5th pick, slotting in there. Maybe he gets 3 or 4 fantasy points. I mean, it really reminds me a lot of that 2022 build where we get Bubba Wallace, Daniel Suarez, maybe even just Bubba Wallace, 46 fantasy points, 4.5 fast lap points, solid day. You don't think Chase Briscoe could do that? $7,400. Very much believe that Chase Briscoe can come in that spot. And you look at him this year, ranking-wise in terms of average running position in the short tracks, 14th. Not really that big into Ty Gibbs. There is something about Daniel Suarez that appeals to me. Pretty good Iowa race that he's coming off of. Let me look. Obviously, he was optimal in 2022. Not a bad race in 2023 with an average running position of 16th. Again, like some other drivers, I don't really think New Hampshire, Daniel Suarez, but hey, looks pretty good in those 2 races. I'm not really high on RFK this week. Christopher Bell. You know, we could argue that what if it's a Christopher Bell dominated race? Bell won the race in 2022. 2023 was in a late race wreck. Just spun himself out, going too hard, being too aggressive, running inside the top 10 at the end. Otherwise, would have been the optimal lineup once again. 2022, that's when he got that win and really started to have his breakthrough moment. He will be running double duty this weekend. He's been absolutely crushed in the Xfinity Series at New Hampshire. And we have seen him really kind of parlay running in one race in the lower series into having a good race in the Cup Series. So I like that. Todd Gilliland, 3 of the 4 races, he's been a top value pick, or at least he has scored a top 20 DFS score at a price below $7,000. That's what this illustrates. So Phoenix, 42 fantasy points, 37 in Martinsville, 33 at Iowa, priced under $7,000 and a top 20 DFS score. And again, Gilliland and Front Row Motorsports, and Michael McDowell's got a 3 as well, are allied with Penske. Penske is looking pretty strong of late. Now, we go down here to our values, and I think probably what we'll do is just real quickly look at what did they do last year, what have they done. So, you know, no surprises. We're looking at average running position in the short track package. Drivers from Gregson, Busch, Priest, Jones, Allmendinger, Hosever, Stenhouse. Not a lot of separation. Not a lot of surprises. The drivers finishing, outside of the top 20, running towards the back of the field in the Gen 7 short track package, you're pretty familiar with them. They're not race contenders. So let's use last year's New Hampshire races or last couple to see if this can help us differentiate. Gregson got into a wreck last year. Kyle Busch got into a wreck last year. Priest, I'm probably not excited about. Jones, smoke and mirrors, plays the caution game last year. Could do it happen again. I mean, it just depends on what you want to see happen or how you think that things are going to unfold. Stenhouse, not the worst. If they can put together full races, put together a full race last. I mean, we say that all the time. And we've been saying that for years. And Stenhouse has been saying that for the years. And he's always saying we. And a lot of times the we is he. But either way, we, he, however you want it to be, when the 47 and Stenhouse put together a full race, they're a top 15 car. Sometimes even a top 10 car. But those times don't happen. More often than not, he or we or thee do not put together a complete race. If Stenhouse puts together a complete race, he's knocking the door of top 15. McDowell finished 13th last year. As I mentioned before, Penske Speed, Gilly, definitely can lean that direction, especially if McDowell continues to not run well in qualifying. Almost about ready to give up on Cindric. Not bad runs here from Haley. 17th last year, 20th the year before that. Obviously finishing a lot better than his running position, but he's finishing better than his running position. Austin Dillon's been optimal in the last two New Hampshire races, so you can't just completely rule him out of hand. He was optimal last week. Especially if we get cautions at the end, you like how Dillon could play the game. Anybody else standing out? Yeah, Harrison Burton finished 20th last year, but that was a completely different year. I think that'll do it. Hopefully these picks help. That's the way we're leaning. I like building based on, or at least approaching it right now, from the standpoint of I want the driver who's going to crush, which I think will be Truex. Maybe it'll be Bell. Whatever. We got our one guy that runs away with it. Then from there, I want to build drivers that are going to run in the top 5 all day and scrape fast laps and finish. Now, I know what you're saying is that, 2023, that's not the way that it worked. And that is simply because a lot of our really good drivers had the bad things happen to them. If the bad things don't happen to Bell or Byron, then they end up off them. Now, maybe not Bell, because Bell was at $11,200. But Byron and Blaney in the $9,000 range, had they not had unfortunate circumstances, then it would have been very similar to this 2022 build where Bell at 9.1 and Harvick at 8.8. That could easily have been last year. Byron at under 10K and Blaney at under 10K. And then from there, you're picking drivers who just have steady, solid races, like a Suarez, a Wallace, and then your value just the best that you can get. That's the way I like to lean. Thanks for joining me. Again, racefortheprize.com, July, $30, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Nashville, Chicago, Pocono, Indy, IRP. I'll throw in New Hampshire. How about that? What a nice guy. And since I'm such a nice guy, because you're such a nice guy, I am blessed that you nice people come and check out this show. And you like, and you subscribe, and you share. And I love you guys. Trip to Light, fantastic.